Hello and welcome everybody to Feature Friday. Hello, I'm Jackie Kwan, co-founder of Uplifter, and with me today, Garrett Trott, our product expert. Good afternoon, Garrett. How are you doing today?
Hi, Jackie. Good, thank you. How are you?
It's a beautifully warm day for it being November. It's almost disconcerting, and I don't know if I want to say, yay,
It's suspicious. You should be
yay, climate
suspicious.
change.
Yeah,
you know, like. So I hope everybody's having a wonderful Friday.
it's a
Um,
great positive start to to our webinar.
I know. I feel good things are happening today. I really do. Today we're actually going to talk about batches, and I wish I were talking about cookies and cupcakes. And on the weekends, I definitely am talking about cookies and cupcakes. But today we're actually going to be talking about batch processing and some of the different things that you can do with Uplifter to streamline how to actually complete a whole bunch of tasks at once. This will be very useful, especially given I know a lot of organizations are running into a lot of uncertainty over these days with COVID, where sometimes they may have to, shut a whole bunch of programs down or change some pricing or change some payments. So we've got a couple of tools that we have shown some of them before, but we're just going to do a bit of a refresher because there might have been a few new features that we've added or enhancements that we've added to them since. Or as well, we're also going to talk about batch payment processing, which is also good because I don't think we've actually covered that topic here on our Feature Fridays. So Garrett, are you going to share with us and show us how to do these wonderful things?
I am indeed. Yes, thank you very much for that wonderful introduction. Yes, so today we're going to be looking at batches, and as Jackie noted, we are going to start off with batch payments. Now, this feature can be found via accounting payments. And on this page, you'll see the batch update option here along the toolbar, but you'll note that this is not available presently. And this is because you do need to filter, as this little pop-up is noting, you need to filter down to either pending or decline payments there. So actually, my apologies, just pending. So we can select the payment status filter to filter down to pending payments and filter said page. And once we do, we see that this button is now accessible. So once we have done so or filtered the page even further to work with our selected grouping of payments, we can select the batch update option from the toolbar. And this allows us to work with all of these payments at once, as you can see. Along the top here, we have the ability to change the status of these payments. Now, more than likely, you're going to be moving pending payments to a paid status when you receive a bunch of checks. However, there are some other statuses here. Undeposited, for instance, where you receive a check but you haven't yet put it into your bank account. And there is still the pending status. Now, this is actually really cool because when you select the pending status, you still have the ability to batch update all of these payments and select a new payment time. And what that means to you guys is if there is, an uncertainty or you want to sort of push those payments a little bit into the future, you can do that with a really quick process through this and just say, you know what? We're not actually expecting the payments until December 1st now. And so you can move all of these payments to December 1st. They're expected on date. And that way people aren't going into arrears when you don't want them to. Now, as you are working through this process here, you'll have the ability to specify a batch name and of course the payment time, which we just saw. And further, you can add a transaction ID and approval code if you're setting it to a paid status to each one of these different payments. And last but not least, you can also uncheck or deselect payments that you don't want to be involved in this process. So maybe the way that you filtered happened to catch a couple of payments that aren't going to be updated, like John didn't give us $1,000, but he did give us 100. You can unselect that and proceed with just updating the ones that you've checked off. So that is a great tool, especially for the uncertain times that we're in right now. If you happen to need to push those payments into the future, this is a really great tool now that this offers pending. That is batch payments. Do you want to add anything to that by chance, Jackie?
Yes, just very briefly. Just of note as to why you can't actually update certain types of payments. We don't actually allow you to update paid payments and declined payments just because they're in, once you've marked a payment as paid, we basically don't let you edit that value, and we need to sort of retain those elements. So that's why you can't actually batch update paid payments or declined payments. On the invoice edit page on specific invoices, you may have a couple of those options available for declined payments and in certain cases paid payments, but to ensure that your system is in sync with, for example, your Bambora merchant account, you're not allowed to basically update some of those elements. So that's why that functionality is limited to only basically pending payments, undeposited payments, and overdue payments. Those filters on the side there. So.
Perfect. Thank you very much for that. So next we are moving over to the batch invoices feature. Now we did actually have a past webinar on this. However, since that webinar, we've introduced some updates and some features that you may not yet be aware of, given the fact that we haven't done a webinar on it since. So this is available through Accounting Invoices, and you'll find the option to batch invoice along the toolbar here. Now, very similar to the payments option, the items that you're batch invoicing, or the items that you're affecting, can be changed or updated based off of the filters that you apply to your page. So for instance, I have a bunch of invoices here, and were I to select batch invoice, I would be working with all of these invoices. Further, if I were to apply a filter to this, for instance, to just access only a singular Baseball Sundays program, then I would be reducing the number of invoices I'm working with, and I can move forward with batch invoicing just these invoices. However, it's also important to note that filtering the invoices that you're working with in a very particular way also has a secondary effect, and we'll see that in just a second. Let's say for sake of argument, I don't filter anything, and I go to the batch invoices page. We'll see a page that looks like this. This is the first step of the batch invoicing process. And on the left-hand side, we see the filtered invoices, or the invoices that we're going to be working with and affecting. Because I didn't filter in any way, I'm working with all of these invoices. So you can see these here in a list. You can see the invoice numbers and who I'm working with. But further, because I didn't filter this in any way, I'm also seeing on the left hand, or the right hand side, excuse me, the number of filtered items on each one of these invoices. Now that's important because the filtered items and the count thereof may have an effect on how we're affecting these invoices, depending on the actions that we're taking. As a quick for example, if I wanted to add an adjustment to increase the cost by $100, and I didn't target a specific item, I would actually be affecting each one of the items on these invoices. So poor John here gets 6, whereas Will only gets 2. And that seems a little unfair depending on my desired outcome. So instead of that, what you'll very likely want to do is navigate to the invoices page and filter to specific items that you want to affect. So if you're looking to increase or decrease the cost of a program or a product, if you want to make an adjustment or add a new item based off of a past purchase, you'll want to filter down to those specific items so that you're looking at a more focused list. So let's say for sake of argument, I am going to filter by my Baseball Sundays. Not only do I reduce the number of invoices I'm working with, but when we actually go to batch update, I'm also working with a far reduced number of filtered items. And that's because I'm only looking at that one program. Now, sometimes you might see invoices where you get 2 or 3, and those are invoices where there's multiple participants registered or purchasing the same item. So you still might see more than one in this list, but now we're focused on that one specific item, and we can make changes based around that individual item. Now, further on this left-hand side here, we also have the ability to exclude or include withdrawn participants. If you're working with programs or you've filtered your invoices page by a program, you'll probably want to exclude withdrawn participants, especially if you're going to be adding or reducing costs. You probably want to work with those people who are actually still in the program. So this is checked by default, but of course you can uncheck that if you'd like, and further users will be added in. Additionally, we have the only filtered match invoice items, which means only filtered match invoice items, which means we can remove that filter that we've applied. Sorry, a little brain fart there. We can remove those filters that we've applied. So in this particular instance, when we filtered down to Baseball Sundays, we did only have those ones there, but I can say, you know what? No, I just want to work with the invoices. So now John's back at 6 items. So if I were to make an adjustment based off of the filtered items, John would see it 6 times, whereas this John invoice would only see it once. So that's definitely something to be considered consider as well. Next, on the right-hand side, we have our batch edits, and this is where you can make the changes that you want to see on these invoices. There are several ways that you can affect an invoice or the invoices that you are working with, and these actually align very similarly with the changes that you would make in any case if we were working on individual invoices. So for instance, you can add a product or a program or a subscription. You can add an adjustment. Generally, when you are adding an adjustment, it is based off of the filtered items, if you have done so, or you can target a specific item on these invoices. Further, you can also add a custom line. So if you just wanted to add a new line to these items, you can certainly do so. And very similar to the add program products and subscription option, we see this add adjustment per. And what we can do is we can toggle this between different variations. So we can add a custom line based off of the filtered invoice items. So we could do it one time on this invoice, or uncheck this and do it 6 times on this invoice. We can do this based off of filtered participants. In this instance, on this invoice, there's only going to be 1 participant. On some of the other ones, there might be 2 or 3 or more. Or we can do it on filtered member. So if I only wanted to add a custom line like a membership fee, but it's only based off of the parent or guardian, then I could select this. And even though John has multiple invoices, he'd only see the fee ones. So those options are also available to a limited degree on the add product and subscription. We also have the ability to withdraw users from a program, and during that process you can add an adjustment. So you can say, yes, all of these people are going to be withdrawn and I want to refund them, $100 off of that program. This is obviously part and parcel with a lot of the COVID fallout. So should you happen to need that again, it is there for you and makes it very, very easy to make those type of adjustments en masse. And last but not least, we do, of course, have the delete option where you can just completely remove an item. And in this instance, you do actually have to specify a specific target. You can't just delete everything. So you do need to mark off a target. And very similar to any filter that you might see within the system, targeting is done very easily. You just begin to type in the name and select the item that you want to target. Jackie, would you like to interject?
Do you have like a big blinking button that every time I click unmute, it shows you?
No, I think your microphone is just very, very sensitive, so I can hear just like that little come on.
Is that, or maybe you're just very sensitive, Garrett? You're sensitive.
Aww.
You're awesome. Anyways, sorry. What I was just going to mention is Garrett's provided a brief overview of the different elements, but as you explore this feature, and what's good about this feature is that you can actually go through the process, and it isn't until you see at the bottom, you see step 1 of 4. It isn't until you get to that 4th step that we save everything. So you can kind of go back and forth through the process to make sure that everything is going to adjust the way that you expect. But this tool allows you to do a whole bunch of different things. Like, for example, you might notice that there's an add invoice item button there. You can actually add more than one adjustment to all of these items and affect the invoices and affect these batches in many, many ways. So you could do something where you're withdrawing everybody from one program, but then let's say you've had to collapse 2 programs because you've lost some ice, or you need to restrict the number of hours that you're actually operating. So let's say you've withdrawn the 3 or 4 participants from this one program because you need to shut it down because you don't want to be open past 5, and you want to re-add them to another program and consolidate a couple of programs. So you can certainly do multiple things at once, all at one time, and go back and forth through that process to ensure that you're making the adjustments in the right way, and play with this until you kind of get to that right spot, and you don't have to click on step 4 until you're sure that everything is going to work the way that you would expect.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for that. So yes, as Jackie noted, you can add multiple variations or multiple edits that you want to apply to these invoices. Once you're happy with the items that you've done, you can then name your batch, whatever you would like to name it. This name does need to be unique compared to any other batch that you've created. This is going to be a unique identifier for you in your reporting process. So name it something smart. Don't name it batch 1 because you'll never remember how many batches you're in. So name your batch whatever you'd like to name it, add any notes that you'd like to, and toggle whether or not that's going to be a private note or not, and move on to the next step. On the next step, you're going to see a recap of the invoices that you're affecting. And beyond that, you'll also see the lines that you've added, the edits that you've added. So you can actually see a sort of a summary of what's going to be happening on these invoices as you sort of proceed. You can see who's going to owe money, who's not going to, etc. Now on the right-hand side, you'll have the option to start working with payments. If you are making an adjustment that increases or decreases the cost, you'll need to tell the system how to work with that. For instance, if these people owe money, how do I want them to pay? Well, I can select credit card, and if they have a credit card on file, it'll just process those cards for me once I complete this process. Or if I'm expecting them to pay offline, I can say that everyone's going to be paying by check, etc. Now, I can also, if I'm going to be doing a refund, I can select multiple methods on how I want to refund. For instance, maybe I want to use a gift certificate to refund. Actually, my apologies, this is for the payments. So if I want to use gift certificates, I can process those. And if that doesn't happen to compensate for all of the values, then I can select another payment method to compensate for the rest. So for instance, if Billy here, or Greg Volleyball, my apologies, only had $50 in credits, then he would need to pay the rest of the $50 in a secondary method. So I can select that. So once you have indeed selected your desired method, you can select next and move to step number 3. Step number 3 is the final step in terms of the confirmation of your process. You will want to review very thoroughly what is going to happen on these invoices for each one. You'll not only see the user and the invoice name, but you'll see every single detail about what's going to be applied or removed and what the outcome is in regards to their payment amounts and their owing balances. Further, you'll also see on the right-hand side of each invoice listing an option to include or disclude this invoice, which means that if you do happen to have an invoice involved in your listing that you don't want to include or be affected by these changes, you can absolutely remove that invoice from this process and they will not be affected by the changes. Even though they're listed here, you have removed them so they won't be included in the change. So once you're happy, oh, Jackie, go ahead.
Sorry, I was just going to say there's a lot of background automatic things that happen with this invoice process to ensure that you're step through what it is that you need to do. So for example, one of the reasons why Garrett was going to show you how there are multiple ways to, if in terms of the payment, being able to select multiple methods of payment if you run out of one type or the next. One of the things that the system did was it sort of detected in the background that the users actually had gift certificates that already fulfilled the amount that he was wanting to charge. So everything was going to get covered by a gift certificate. If it knew that there was going to be, that wasn't going to cover it, then it would then suggest other options. I think this should work. I think, maybe not. Yes, see, and that's why. So because these fees are going to far exceed the amount of gift certificate value, gift certificates that these users actually have on account. So
I
it
believe
will
they don't have
continue.
$100,000 on
I
credit.
know. What is the problem here? So Uplifter will sort of guide you through this process before you're able to sort of go to the next step, so that once you actually complete all of this batch processing, you're going to run into as few errors as possible during the final processing when it's trying to process a credit card or process a bunch of gift certificates or all the rest. So yes, Uplifter tries its best to do that. You might want to not try to process all of that amount for. Are you going to click save? Are you going
What do
to
you
click
mean?
like?
Yeah, why not? These aren't real people. It's fine. So once you are happy with everything that you have done and the adjustments that are going to be taking place, the last step on step 3 of 4 is to click save, which will of course bring you to step 4, which is the confirmation page. So this might take a little while, especially if you're working with a lot of invoices at once, but once it's completed that process, it will present you with the ability to download an Excel spreadsheet with the changes that you have made. So we very highly recommend that you save this option so that you have this information available to you. Right now in this example, we're just going to select open. This is going to open an Excel file which shows us the changes that we made to those invoices. So we have that available to us on record. So that is the batch invoicing feature, and before that was the batch payment feature. Jackie, do you have anything else that you would like to add to these topics?
No, not at all, actually. I was just unmuting myself to sign off. So other than if you are a club that is using Uplifter and you know of another organization that could benefit from using Uplifter, as always, click on the refer and save link in your administrative tools and use the refer and save option to refer a friend. This will allow your club to save $10 a month for 6 months, and then as well also allow the new club that comes on board to save $10 a month for 6 months. So it's a great way to share heading into this. Are we ready almost to say holiday season? I think we're getting close.
Oh, is that Christmas music in the background? What are you doing? No. Yes, thank you everyone for your time today. It was always appreciated. I hope you all have a lovely weekend. We'll be back next Friday with another fantastic Feature Fridays for you.
Thanks a lot. Take care, everybody.